I'm an American composer born in New York City who had the good fortune 32 years ago to obtain a position at Stony Brook University, one of two flagship universities in the large State University of New York system. I was educated at the University of Illinois, UCLA, and Columbia University, and then returned to New York after a 5-year stint teaching music, philosophy, and literature in prisons in the state of Ohio. I'm a composer exclusively of acoustic music, and my work is primarily about sound, and not about sound as analogy or metaphor, nor is it an embodiment of scientific or any other kind of research. Happily, in the United States, even in fine research institutions like Stony Brook, there is little pressure to think of art as research, and one can still make art that needs no justification beyond its own materials in the tradition of chamber music by Mozart, Beethoven, Schubert, Brahms, and Bartók. That said, my music is sympathetic to musical influences outside of the classical tradition, including jazz, spirituals, blues, and even work that reaches back for inspiration to the music of classical composers working centuries ago. I've written a lot of music for saxophone as the result of a fortuitous meeting in 1992 with the Aurelia Saxophone Quartet, a Dutch ensemble, in which can be heard vernacular music from the jazz, blues, spiritual, and work song traditions. I've also collaborated 4 times with Richard Powers, the novelist who won the Pulitzer Prize for Overstory in 2019. Our projects have included a song cycle that tells the story of the Robert Falcon Scott expedition to the South Pole, and our most recent collaboration was a song cycle called Birding by Ear, for which Rick Powers wrote the 6 texts. That piece was premiered at the Great Lakes Music Festival in 2022. Twittering Machine is the relatively ancient piece on the upcoming Hard Rain program. It was composed in 1997 and is one of only 3 out of about 50 pieces without text that had its inspiration in a non-musical source. That inspiration is a 1922 watercolored ink and pen drawing by the same name, Twittering Machine, by Swiss artist Paul Klee. The painting looks whimsical, but it is made of birds' heads on barbed wire posts, with a crank that makes it look like a toy or musical instrument. The piece was composed for an annual premieres concert series that has been going strong at Stony Brook since 1988. Composers write premieres for Stony Brook's Contemporary Chamber Players, an ensemble of mostly doctoral student performers. I'm in good company, as 2 composers well known to Hard Rain have written for it, Greg Caffrey, its ex-director, and Piers Hillowell, a deservedly favorite composer of the ensemble. I wouldn't put it into any stylistic box, as I think it's somewhat eclectic. It is largely atonal, meaning not in a key, though I've always relied on my ears rather than a system to generate pitches and rhythms. It also features disparate kinds of music, frequently uncomfortably juxtaposed, as was an aspect of my style in those days. I'm happy to say that this is an encore performance of the piece by Hard Rain, so I know the work is in excellent hands. So what might you watch out for? First of all, listen to how the work unfolds. The piece begins with misty, mysterious music created by long notes in the piano and vibraphone. Out of this haze comes pointed music, first by the piccolo and then by various instruments that punctuate the dreamy music with fast, nervous figures. These start to percolate throughout the texture in all registers and threaten to take over. The thing to listen for throughout the piece is how those competing elements, dreamy music, pointed, agitated punctuations, and long melodic lines, jostle for primacy, creating an unpredictable unfolding. There are lots of interruptions, lots of instruments jockeying for position, lyrical solos breaking out suddenly and often squelched. Jittery and unpredictable as it is, there's also a lot of humor in the piece and lots of opportunity for virtuoso display by instruments that suddenly leap to center stage. Another thing to listen for are some tender moments as sections grow longer. For example, a rather romantic cello solo about 3/5 of the way through the 15-minute piece that I'm sure is going to be played beautifully by Dave McGann. And finally, one of my favorite moments comes about 4 minutes from the end, leading up to a big climax. The piano and vibraphone play twittering chords while the melody instruments, piccolo, bass clarinet, violin, and cello, play sumptuous long lines in counterpoint. By the end of the section, all of the instruments revert to the twittering music in rhythmic unison to create a really dissonant climax. I think there was a tendency in my work of that period to destroy tender moments with acerbic, beauty-crushing music. Now, a quarter of a century later, I think I've learned not to do that. Coming up for me is a new work for piano, string quartet, and double bass. I just flipped the switch to summer mode last week after an arduous academic year, and I've now begun work. The piece is intended for a performance by pianist Eliza Garth for a concert of music by Mozart, as well as a composer dear to Hard Rain, Judith Ware.